Good evening and welcome to Current Issues. I'm your host, Hesham Tillawi. Welcome to the program, ladies and gentlemen. What is happening between us and Iran? Somebody is beating the war drums. Sources are saying that we will be attacking Iran very soon. Some said that it will take place in the week after Labor Day weekend. Well, we are in the week after Labor Day weekend. Some say by September 15th. So some say within a couple of months. Definitely one thing is apparent is our military is ready. They have identified about 1,200 targets in Iran, and sources say that our aircraft carriers are ready to take action. Vice President Cheney, a couple of days ago, gave orders to the media to start changing the opinion of the American people about war with Iran. You see a lot of these so-called analysts come to you on Fox TV. Very soon they will be on CNN and all the other major networks. They will be on the major newspapers in the country. You will read their opinions and editorials of why is it so important for us to go and attack Iran. Of course, they want to sell you the war on Iran, just like they sold you the war on Iraq, by installing fear within you. Fear that Iran will have a nuclear bomb and it will kill us all, so we need to go and kill them before they kill us. But the government, the administration, know that it will not get the 80-some% it got back in 2003 and before we went and attacked Iraq. Right now they are hoping for 35 to 40%. If they get 35 to 40% approval, that is plenty enough for them to move on their track of attacking the country of Iran. Now, what is the benefit of attacking Iran? Why do we want to attack Iran? Of course, we are blaming Iran for our mess in Iraq. We are blaming the instability in Iraq on the Iranians. But imagine what will happen if we actually go and attack Iran. People such as William Crystal of the Weekly Standard is pushing for war against Iran. This is the same guy that pushed for war against Iraq. He's, of course, the editor of the Weekly Standards and also the chairman of the Project for a New American Century. That proved to be failure, but apparently to these neocons, it's still a success story that they would like to finish. Now, by finishing this story, ladies and gentlemen, we would probably have occupied most of the Middle East. I don't know with what, because we are stretched out as it is. Now, William Crystal does not want us just to surgically attack Iran. He actually wants to have American troops go into Iran. He is pushing all the Republican candidates to basically continue with their rhetoric against Iraq and against Iran. Of course, the only one that is not going along with him is Ron Paul, that people have accused that he's going to make or cause the Republican Party to lose the election because he's speaking against the war. I think they got it wrong. if the Republican Party has any sense in its head, it would go along with what Ron Paul is doing if they really want this election. So how important it is for us to go and attack Iran, and why do we want to attack Iran? Well, today we have with us a gentleman who joined us a couple of times before, the Honorable Dr. Paul Craig Roberts, who was the former Assistant Secretary of the Treasury in the Reagan administration. He was Associate Editor of the Wall Street Journal editorial page and contributing editor of the National Review. He is author or co-author of 8 books, including The Supply Side Revolution, published by the Harvard University Press. He has held numerous academic appointments, including the William E. Simon Chair in Political Economy, Center for Strategic and International Studies at Georgetown University, and Senior Research Fellow at the Hoover Institution, Stanford University. He has contributed to numerous scholar journals and testified before Congress on 30 different occasions. He has been awarded the United States Treasury's Meritorious Service Award and the French Legion of Honor. He was a reviewer for the Journal of Political Economy under editor Robert Mundell. Dr. Roberts, welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sir, we hear the same story that we heard before, that we really need to go and attack Iran before they threaten world peace and world stability. Why is it so important that we go and attack Iran, Dr. Roberts?
Well, it's actually important that we don't attack Iran. We, of course, I guess means the United States government or the Bush administration. We don't seem to have much to say about it. Attacking Iran is a part of the project for a new American century. It was set out, I think, 10 years or more ago. The neoconservatives who control the Bush administration, principally through the Vice President Cheney, believe in American hegemony, not just over the Middle East, but over the entire world. They believe that with the collapse of the Soviet Union, the countervailing power, that nothing now prevents the United States from dominating the world. And they believe that the United States has the right and the obligation to dominate the world. They've chosen the Middle East as the beginning of this enterprise because of 9/11, which was blamed on Muslims, and because the neoconservatives are closely allied with the right-wing Israeli governments, who are very proficient at using American blood and American money to finance their own territorial expansion. And also, of course, they started in the Middle East, that is, the neoconservatives started their hegemonic exercise in the Middle East because they knew the oil companies would welcome it, and of course they're major campaign contributors. And they knew, of course, that the military security complex would welcome it, since it would mean tens of billions in additional profits. So that's the reason we are already involved in 2 wars in the Middle East, one in Afghanistan, which we're not winning, and one in Iraq, which we're not winning. And the reason for attacking Iran is that, having overthrown the Sunni regime of Saddam Hussein, the idiots in the Bush administration have discovered that they, in effect, turned Iraq over to the Shiites, who are historically allied with Iran. And so to undermine the work they've done in Iraq by giving power to the Shiites. They want to go destroy the Shiite base in Iran. They also want to do it because Israel fears Iran and fears its capability of eventually one day producing a nuclear weapon that would be a check to Israel's own nuclear armaments, and thereby a check on Zionist territorial expansion. The Israelis want to eliminate the free Middle Eastern governments that are not ruled by American puppets. That was Iraq, Syria, and Iran, in order to deprive the Palestinians of any support so that they can complete the theft of the entire West Bank. So for Israel, it's a question of territorial expansion and removing those who could oppose it or support the Palestinians in any way. For the American neoconservatives, it's an ideology akin to that of the Jacobins of the French Revolution, that we have the virtue and we're going to impose it on the world. Of course, the French Revolution was content merely to impose it on Europe. And then it's the combined interests of powerful groups like oil and the military security complex. So that is the story right there.
So very much it's a partnership between money, Zionists, and oil, but the ones who really fight the wars is the American people. And
yeah, it's all the brainwashed and bamboozled Americans who think that somehow they're deterring a threat to the homeland. They're actually creating one, but in fact, they're permitting the greatest threat that America has ever faced is the neoconservatives and the Bush administration, because they are the ones who are successfully attacking the United States Constitution and the separation of powers and concentrating dictatorial-type powers in the presidency. So the greatest threat that the United States has ever faced in its entire existence is coming from the neoconservatives who control the Bush administration.
So the greatest threat to America is our own government?
It's our own government. Of course, there's nothing unusual about that. That was the doctrine of the Founding Fathers. That's what the Founding Fathers who created the country said and told us, and it's why they created the U.S. Constitution and the Bill of Rights and the separation of powers. So,
now, Dr. Robert, let me try to understand this one, because a lot of people watching us now, they're probably thinking, we can't believe that our own government is the one that is actually destroying the country, or have the greatest threat on the country. Now, why would they want to do this? Why would these neocons, Zionists, etc., want to do this to America?
Well, I told you, the neocons have an ideology, and for them, that's the agenda, their ideology. They could care less what the American people think about it. That's why they deceived us and told us that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction, which they knew Iraq did not have. But they deceived us. The president lied to us. They sent the Secretary of State, Colin Powell, to lie to the UN. They've lied to all the newspapers. So they had an agenda, and they wanted to achieve their agenda. That is what's important to them. So it's a simple answer to the question.
Okay.
People need to understand also that the terrorists in no way can strip us of the Constitution or the Bill of Rights or our civil liberties. Only our government can do that by breaking the oath that they swear when they assume office. So the terrorists can never threaten us in the way that the Bush administration did when the Attorney General Gonzalez testified before the Senate Judiciary Committee and said that the United States Constitution does not provide habeas corpus protection to American citizens.
Okay.
No one in our history has ever said that. This is an absurdity. If they take away habeas corpus protections, it means that anyone in the executive branch can have anyone they want picked up at any time without charge or reason or evidence and put in a dungeon for the rest of their life without a trial. So, obviously, governments could silence all critics. Lowly members of the government could settle personal scores. There's no end to the abuse and injustice that comes if you don't have habeas corpus. And yet, the Bush Attorney General of the United States tells the Senate Judiciary Committee that a protection that is explicit in the Constitution is not there. No terrorist can possibly pose that kind of a danger or threat to the United States. The United States is the Constitution. That's what it is. Anyone who attacks the Constitution is attacking the United States.
Now, Doctor, news coming from the Gulf area that the American military is ready. They had chosen 1,200 targets that they will attack. And orders came from Vice President Cheney a couple of days ago to the media to start basically changing the minds and opinions of Americans to support this attack. And we see it with Bill Kristol of the Weekly Standards on Fox Network and others who are basically trying to push this idea of attack Iran. Now, I'm looking at it and I'm seeing we can't hardly hang on to what we have in Iraq, but yet we want to go and attack another country. Is there something that we're not understanding here, or maybe the administration is not understanding that we don't have enough people, we don't have even enough money to take this action? What are they depending on? I mean, our economy, you are an economist, you're responsible for Reaganomics. Now, tell me
It's very simple for them to attack Iran. They'll do it from the air and with cruise missiles. And Iran has no protection against either. They don't have any significant air defenses, and there's very little, if any, protection against cruise missiles. Even our ability, or the Russians' ability, to protect against cruise missiles is practically non-existent. So we can attack them in devastating ways, even with nuclear weapons. And the notion is that we can destroy all of the public infrastructure like Israel did to Lebanon last year, and that we can create such chaos that the government won't be able to function. So that's the belief, and that's the battle plan, and they don't intend to put troops in there, and they're praying that it somehow goes badly for the United States so that they can justify the use of nuclear weapons.
Now, what about our aircraft carriers sitting right there?
Well, they wouldn't care less. That would just serve their purpose. If they could get one of those carriers sunk, then all the Americans would be up in arms. We've got to stick it to Iran. What they want to do is to nuke Iran. And the reason they want to nuke Iran is because they have concluded from the Iraqi resistance that their earlier belief that they could dominate the Middle East with conventional arms is wrong. That they can't deal with the Middle East with conventional arms because they're an occupying force on a hostile territory and can't deal with insurgency. But they have decided if they nuke Iran, it will send a message to all the Muslims that they have no recourse whatsoever but to bow to America's will, because an insurgent cannot resist nuclear weapons. And therefore, they are looking for some reason to use nuclear weapons against Iran in order to send a message.
Now, Dr. Roberts, nuclear weapons can be carried in a suitcase these days. So if we attack Iran with nuclear weapons, that very much opens and gives the Iranians the right to attack us with nuclear weapons too.
The Iranians don't have any nuclear weapons or any suitcases with bombs in them. That's an old wives' tale. All this stuff about 100 missing Soviet suitcase bombs. This is utter baloney.
Okay.
There weren't any such weapons, and they've made that. They've made this story up in order that they can scare people and get more police state control over domestic population.
But there are other ways to kill people besides nuclear bombs. My point is, if we attack them, then the game is very much open for them to do anything they want to do to the Americans, and no one in the world would even think twice about it.
Listen, my friend, I'm not advocating that we attack Iran. I'm explaining to you the mentality of the neoconservatives.
Yeah.
And so there's no point arguing with me.
No, we're not arguing.
I'm just idea. I don't think it's a good idea. I think it's an evil, immoral, unjustified idea. It's like Hitler starting World War II by attacking Poland. I'm totally opposed to it. But the neoconservatives are not opposed to it, and they are the ones who are in power, not me.
Okay.
So it's likely that it's going to happen. Your question is, what can stop them?
Yes.
And Bush and Cheney, Bush has already shown that he's going to do this. He made that clear, I think, at the speech of the Veterans of Foreign Wars a week or two ago.
Right.
And Cheney has made it clear that all he needs is 35% support from the American people.
Okay.
And so they're using the corporate media to gin up fear and anger on the part of American people. If they can get 35% behind them, they'll strike. And the Congress has collapsed. The Senate passed a resolution 97-0 condemning Iran, and Nancy Pelosi, under pressure from AIPAC, withdrew her resolution that would have required Bush to come to Congress for approval to attack Iran. So, the Pentagon has removed from U.S. war doctrine the prohibition against the first use of nuclear weapons and the prohibition against using nuclear weapons against non-nuclear countries, so that everything is ready for them to roll forward. And I don't think they'll have much trouble getting 35% support, and if they do, they'll stage some incident, or they'll tell some more lies. So it looks to me like the probability is extremely high that Iran will be attacked.
Okay, very good. Doctor, stay with me. We're going to go to the phones, going on the West Coast with James. Go ahead, James. James, you're on.
Hi, Dr. Tillawi. Thank you for taking my call.
You're welcome.
I haven't been able to hear you on the internet today, so I haven't been able to catch Paul Craig Roberts' discussion here, but I followed his articles and actually had mentioned his recent piece about the well, not a recent piece, but the neo-Jacobin hijacking of our government, one of his prior articles on Tom Hartman's radio program, and he actually keeps cutting me off every time I bring up the war for Israel aspect. But what I wanted to address is the Mearsheimer and Walt book about the pro-Israel lobby and how it pushed us to attack Iraq and is now doing similar to get us to attack Iran, right in accordance with what Mr. Roberts has been saying. It's very concerning because today we have Israeli jets bombing Syria, and that's another way we can get sucked into this conflict. If you read about the clean break agenda in James Bamford's A Pretext for War book, the original agenda was to take down the Palestinians, go after Saddam in Iraq, and that was actually written by Richard Pearl and Douglas Feith and David Wurmser in Dick Cheney's office to have Israel do it. And today we see Israel bombing Syria, and we're waiting for Syria's retaliation. And of course, to finish here, we know that Syria and Iran are aligned. So are we going to get to war with Iran before these B-2s are ready? I mean, there was a contract where the B-2s are being modified to carry these 30,000-pound bunker-busting bombs, and that's supposed to be ready by, March or April of next year. And lastly, I agree with most of what, Mr. Roberts conveys, except for 9/11. If you look at James Bamford's Pretext for War book, it was our foreign policy that resulted in us getting tragically attacked at the World Trade Center, not only on 2001, on 9/11, of course, but earlier in 1993. It's our foreign policy supporting what the Israelis do to brutally oppress the Palestinian people. There's no doubt about that. And I even had that exchange with Lee Hamilton. It can be found online at representativepress.blogspot.com, and I conveyed it right to him, and he tried to shut me down. But keep up the good work, Mr. Roberts.
Thanks, James. Any comments on that, Dr. Roberts?
No, he's entitled to his views.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, I think he's entitled to his views. Yeah.
Okay. Now, with Israel supposedly bombing Syrian territories today, do you see that linked in any way to what's going on in Iran? Is that like we're trying to bring Israel into the formula here, or Israel is trying to push itself?
Look, first of all, we don't know that they bombed them. The report that I've seen is that the Israeli jets accelerated to supersonic speeds and dropped their empty wing fuel tanks, and they didn't bomb.
Okay.
They didn't bomb them.
It could be. I mean, I've seen reports that says that.
I think that it's clear enough that Israel will probe the reaction time of the Syrians, and it may certainly be the case that some deal is worked out, and I'm just speculating that when we attack Iran, Israel will attack Syria, because what Israel really wants to do is to grab southern Lebanon, where there's the river and water, which Israel needs, and they can't grab southern Lebanon because they can't defeat Hezbollah. And they think they can't defeat Hezbollah because they're supplied by Israel and Iran. And so if we attack Iran and cause chaos there, and they then attack Syria, and which they would be able to do, and cause chaos there, they can break up the supply to Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, and then they can go back in and deal with them and grab that part of Lebanon which has the river that they want. So it could be something like that. So they were just checking out how long it took the Syrians to realize that their jets were overhead.
So we would see an all-out war in the Middle East. And my question to you, once it's all said and done with, what will we be looking at in the Middle East?
Well, I wouldn't know.
Like Hezbollah would be
looking at Israel with more territory. We would have chaos in Syria, Iraq, and Iran because of the destruction from the air of public infrastructure, power stations, water, roads, bridges, governmental buildings, all of that. And it may well be the case that the Iranians having to deal with that type of situation, they would not be able to supply and incite the Shia in Iraq to intensify their participation in the insurgency against U.S. troops, and in that way it may all work out to the neocons' advantage. On the other hand, it could anger Muslims who are really they're too disunited to be an effective opposition to the United States and Israel. You even have the Palestinians, they're busier, Hamas and Fatah, they're busier killing each other than they are resisting the Israelis, just like in Iraq, the Sunni and the Shia are more busy killing each other than they are resisting the Americans. So it may be that nothing can produce an effective Muslim resistance because of the disunity among Muslims. On the other hand, it could produce such anger that the American puppets in Pakistan fall, and some regime favorable to Al-Qaeda gets empowered and has nukes, and maybe knows how to use them, but who knows? It could cause troubles in Egypt for the American puppet in Egypt. It could start some sort of revolutionary process in the Middle East in which Islam asserts itself over the artificial elite class created by America in the post-war period that rules the Islamic people and is separate and independent of them. So all those things are possible, and I've got no crystal ball, and I'm not knowledgeable enough about all the intricate relationships in the Middle East to be able to make any prediction.
Now, we have seen what the United States policy had done in countries in the Middle East where mainly Islamists are getting, if they're not getting into power, they're getting into the parliaments in most of these countries and winning elections. And we also see in Turkey, for the first time since the fall of the Ottoman Empire, we have someone who is counted on the side of the Islamists become the president. And of course we have his friend, the prime minister. And so we're seeing turmoil in Pakistan. We're seeing turmoil over almost everywhere in all Muslim world. And
that's what I said. Yes.
Yeah.
And
so
it could get worse. On the other hand, if we use nuclear weapons and smash Iran, people may say, "Well, we better not try to stand up for the Americans. It's too costly. It can't be done." So that's what the neocons are betting on. Now, don't ask me to say which way it will go, but it could go very badly for the Americans. We could lose all our puppets and then have to destroy 2 or 3 more countries.
Okay. Now, have you heard?
They won't stop just because.
Right.
You know, if there's a revolution in Pakistan, then they'll go destroy Pakistan. If there's one in Egypt, they'll go destroy Egypt. So the neocons are the equivalent of the Nazis. And they don't think anybody is important but them. And no agenda counts but their agenda. There are no other legitimate agendas. Just like many Zionists think there are no other legitimate people. So when you have that type of attitude that's empowered with military force and control over governments that have powerful militaries, they can be used in very dramatic and inhumane ways. And so we can't assume that they won't be. We've already seen the devastation in Afghanistan in Iraq, and for what purpose? There's no rational purpose being served. There's, according to some counts now, 1 million Iraqi casualties, though most of them are Sunnis and Shia killing each other, and there are maybe 4 million displaced. So we're talking about 5 million Iraqis. That's 20% of the population that's dead or displaced. And for what purpose? What is achieved? You can't say that's bringing them freedom and democracy. It's not. It's bringing them death and destruction and displacement. So if they'll do that in Iraq, and they've done the same thing in Afghanistan, they'll do it in Iran.
Okay. Have you heard?
Do it wherever there's any opposition, as long as they're in power. That's why I say what needs to be done to save the world from any more of these horrors is the impeachment of Bush and Cheney.
Now,
that would send a message. It would close down the neocons, but it's not happening. The Democrats are part of the deal.
The Democrats told us before the elections that they were going to go in there and end this whole thing, but it seems to be that they have been sucked in. All the rhetoric that they had said during the elections, it's all gone now, and they're very much succumbing to the status quo.
They're part of the problem. They're part of the problem. The candidates for president are part of the problem. There are none of them who have taken a stand except Mike Gravel, and of course he doesn't have any more chance than Ron Paul has. So there's nothing on the horizon that blocks the neocon Nazis, the Bush brown shirts, from exercising this raw military power, and the United States will end up more hated, more reviled, and other powerful countries like Russia and China will look at this and arm themselves, and they've already formed a military alliance, and so the world will be back to a far more dangerous position than Ronald Reagan and Gorbachev left it.
Okay. Did you read reports or heard about American military plans to actually secure the Pakistani nuclear installations in case?
Yes, I did.
In case of Musharraf falls, or what do you read into that?
They would try to do that if they have the troops. I don't know if they have the troops. Maybe they could pull them out of Korea or Germany. I don't know what's left in those places. But they would have to be good troops, and they would probably meet opposition.
I mean, Pakistan is a country of about 90 million people, so it's not easy going in there and securing these. So you need.
Well, you see, the neocons thought Iraq would be a cakewalk war over in 3 weeks or 6 weeks. I can't remember which, but 3 to 6 weeks, a cakewalk war. And they miscalculate, but they don't quit because they're wrong. They just create more lies, and they create demands to use more powerful weapons. So as long as
Doctor, if you allow me, I'm going to go back to the phones for one more phone call, and I promise you we will let you go. Just let's go one phone call. Joel, go ahead, Joel.
Hey, how you doing, sir?
Fine, thank you.
I heard that one of the callers earlier mentioned about this massive bomb. You know that on, I think it's the Discovery Channel, they've been showing this awesome bomb. It's called Moab. I don't know if you've heard of it. They're calling this bomb the mother of all bombs, which is a massive ordnance air blast, which this thing is the biggest bomb they have. The only thing bigger is the nuclear weapon. But they said this bomb has over 18,000 pounds of high explosives. Well, they were showing this on television, and it's just exactly what the caller, your guest, is saying. The world is not preparing, Dr. Tillawi, if you can't see what's going on, the world is definitely not preparing for peace. The world is preparing for all-out all-out war. We're seeing it on a great scale. We're seeing it in the economy with China. We're seeing it in everything that these men and women are doing. You know a man's character. How do you know a man's character? By how he keeps his word. You just brought up about Congress. They told us one thing, they get elected, and they get in there, and it's a different, they have a different agenda. So you know a man's character by how he keeps his word. And another thing about Israel and Syria, we found out Israel is attacking Syria. But what you didn't say was that Syria was sending missiles into Israel before Israel actually started attacking them. So it's just, it's retaliate, it's revenge and retaliate. So
Joel,
what we have hatred on both sides.
Okay, well, you say in Syria sending missiles into Israel. I never heard that, and I can't see how.
They just had it on the news. They've been showing it on the news for the last couple of days, where they sent missiles and killed some or bombed near some school with some children or something. I can't remember what town it was.
There's been no missile attacks.
Yeah, there has been no missile attacks. Thanks, Joe. Appreciate your call.
Utter baloney. What they're probably talking about is when Israel attacked southern Lebanon, Hezbollah replied with missiles, and they're probably claiming the missiles came from Syria.
Right.
Syria is not sending missiles.
That was last year.
That was a year ago, and
right.
But I think I would disagree with the caller only other than that point, or one other, and that is that he said the world is preparing for war. I don't think that's the case. I think the United States is preparing for war. The United States is the aggressor. No one else is attacking and invading. We're the ones. We started with Clinton bombing Serbia, and then with Clinton we bombed Iraq for a decade, and then we invaded Afghanistan, and then we invaded Iraq, and then we used Ethiopian proxy troops to invade Somalia, and we're fighting everywhere. They're talking about invading and overthrowing Chavez in South America. The neocons have drawn up war plans against China because they're afraid if they don't attack China by 2012, China will be too powerful and have too many nukes of its own. And so it's the United States that's preparing for war, not the rest of the world. It's the Americans. We are the source of aggression, and that's why world polls, we and the Israelis are the sources of aggression.
Okay.
And that's why the Pew Foundation's world polls show that the United States and Israel are regarded as the two greatest threats to stability in the world. So,
Dr. Roberts.
The problem.
Dr. Roberts, you worked with President Reagan as the Assistant Secretary of the Treasury. Now, if President Reagan was still with us and he's re-elected to be the President of the United States and he inherits this mess that we are in now, what would you think he would do first to end this this nonsense?
Well, it would depend on how much power he had and how strong his election was, but in my opinion, he would be inclined to say this was a great mistake and pull out. And he would probably even want to make some kind of restitution if he thought the American people would stand for it. You have to remember, Reagan was plagued by neoconservatives, but they didn't have anything like the power in his administration they had in the Bushmen. But they caused troubles for him in Nicaragua, the Iran-Contra crisis. But he fired them. And you have to remember, too, that the neoconservatives were very much down on Reagan because they wanted to win the Cold War. They wanted to smash the Soviet Union and drive them into defeat in some way, if not with military weapons, then with economic competition, escalating military buildups until the Russians could no longer keep up or collapsed. And Reagan said, no, we don't want to win. We want to end it.
You know, I remember...
End to end the Cold War. I don't want to win it. I want to end it.
Right.
And so the neocons hated Reagan.
You know, I remember, Doctor, when the Marine barracks in Beirut were bombed during the Reagan administration's era, and instead of bombing the heck out of that country, he actually pulled out, and that was the end of it.
Yeah, because, see, Reagan had enough people that weren't neocons that had sense, and they realized that they had been taken for a ride by the neocons to put the troops over there in the first place. Because, I mean, it looked initially like, oh, well, it was a good thing to do. We would show the flag, and it would help put some sort of peace and order and reassurance and blah, blah. And but when they saw the result, they realized that that was wrong, and they shouldn't have been there, and they got them out. Because they didn't want to have a general Middle Eastern war like the neocons want. See, the problem is that Cheney very much wants that war. He's very much a neocon. And Bush is some sort of puppet that they can control and manipulate and tell him he's being tough and he's the war president and he's the decider. And they give him all these images that he glorifies in. And he hasn't got the wits to see what's being done in his name and with his authority and what the ultimate consequences are. He's just not a smart man. He is very limited. And so they're able to achieve their goal. The people aren't with them, as the polls show, but they don't care. They only need 35%, and they just about have that with the rapture Christians and the Christian Zionists. So they can go to war if they want to, and they want to. So I suspect that's what they're going to do. I can't see what would stop it. You know, the Russians and the Chinese are not going to put their forces on nuclear alert in order to send us a message that if we attack Iran, they're going to unleash the missiles. They're not going to do that. So what is there to stop them? How can they be deterred? They can tell us whatever they want to tell us.
Well,
and who's going to stand up and say that's not true, or suppose they do stand up? It's not going to do any good. You know, the International Atomic Energy Agency has said over and over and over, the inspectors are in Iran, they've been in Iran, they can find no signs of fissionable material diverted to a weapons program. That there aren't any weapons programs. So every time they make that statement, the Bush administration debunks it and ridicules it and contradicts it. But the Bush administration hasn't got any evidence. The only people having evidence is the International Atomic Energy Agency. That's the job.
Well, that seems like the same story over again. It was Iraq first with the weapons of mass destruction, and now Iran.
It's Iraq. That they lied that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. They knew good and well they didn't have. Sidney Blumenthal today is online with an article which shows as clear as day what senior CIA officials say. We knew they had none. George Tenet told Bush they had none, and Bush said, "Baloney, I don't want to hear that. That's wrong." Well, how would Bush know? If the CIA doesn't know, how would Bush know? So
right.
It's the same thing all over again. Look, there's been a whole industry in the United States that does nothing but create hatred of Muslims. There are these think tanks, the American Enterprise Institute, the think tank run by Daniel Pipes. There are endless numbers of these books that come out everywhere about the danger of the Muslim threat and the great threat to the West and so on and so on. There's been a whole industry. It's in the churches, the evangelical rapture churches, the Christian Zionists. They tell people the Muslims are going to kill you in your bed. So they're creating all this hate and fear. And
Very good.
And so it's not going to take too much for the Americans to say, "Oh, see, it is true. Look." So
I got you.
if they stage an incident, who's going to contradict them that has
Right.
any ability to do anything? No one. No one.
Right. Well, sir, I just wanted to say thank you again for coming on the program, and I apologize for keeping you on longer than we should have, but it has
That's
been...
okay. It's an important topic, and thank you for giving attention to it. Let's just hope that I am completely wrong, but it's not just me saying this now.
Yes, sir.
It's everybody saying it. Today, there are two former CIA officials who are saying exactly what I said. So it's everywhere now, and so, but we can hope that we're all overreacting and that it's all just some kind of bluff.
Very good, sir.
All right.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we were saying very much the same thing when we attacked Iraq, and people thought we were crazy. People thought we were un-Americans. You still remember that when people were calling us and telling us that we're anti-American for speaking the way we did. Well, look, everything we told you turned out to be true. And everything we're telling you now, it is true, and it will turn out to be true. Are we going to kill 3 or 4 million Iranians before we know that there was no threat of weapons of mass destruction or nuclear weapons in Iran? And like we always maintained, if Iran gets the bomb, our own experts say it's going to take about 5 to 10 years before they get one bomb. And just imagine... we have 10,000 nuclear bombs, and Israel has 400 nuclear bombs, according to an Israeli expert, Mordechai Vanunu, who said on this show. And other experts put the number at 200 nuclear bombs, but I think that's a heck of a lot more than what Iran ever dreams of having. And if Iran gets one, and if it's crazy enough to use that one, well, guess what's going to happen to where Iran is now? It's going to be just a big hole in the ocean. Anyhow, I don't know if some of you have heard that we had a B-52 bomber flying across central United States and landed in Shreveport, not far from here, with 4 nuclear bombs. There are something like 60 times the strength and the power that the bomb that was thrown over Hiroshima, that destroyed Hiroshima, this was like 60 times stronger. B-52 bomber armed with those 4 bombs. Where was it going? Where did it come from? And it landed right here in Louisiana. The Air Force says it was a mistake, that those bombs should not have been transported the way they were transported, flying over central United States. If this plane would have crashed, ladies and gentlemen, we will be looking at disasters 2 hours away from us in Shreveport. That's what happened. And the Air Force said it was like an error. It was a tragic error or something like that. I don't know what they used, but yeah, it would have been an error, a big error, if this thing would have just went off somewhere. Ladies and gentlemen, do what you can. No war. No more wars for Israel. No more wars for Israel. We don't need to be attacking Iran and killing anyone. We just need to take care of what we have done over there and get it over with. See you next Tuesday, 7:30. Good night. Go do the right thing.
Hi, I'm Keisha Alama, Community Relations Coordinator for Faith House. Faith House is a temporary crisis shelter for victims of domestic violence and their children. We do both residential and